Hi everyone, and welcome. The topic for this video lesson is, make sure you like and comment so that I know this video was helpful. Also comment what topics we should cover next, and do me a favor, ring the subscribe bell. Thanks. For our first example, we have x plus 75 is greater than negative 125. And in inequality, we solve it using the same steps that we would take to solve an equation. We still want to isolate the variable. So we want to get x alone here. We need to move the 75 as positive, so let's subtract 75 on both sides. 75's cancel. We're left with x is greater than. Here we need to do some integer math. The signs are both negative, so we will add the values. That will give us 10, carry the 1, 10, carry the 1, 200, and we want to keep the sign. So x is greater than 200. That's our answer. We want to graph it on a number line. We have negative 200. Negative 100 and negative 300. Putting some values on our number line. We do want to circle the value from our answer, the negative 200. Our circle is going to be open because this inequality is strictly greater than. It does not say or equal to. It doesn't have a line under the symbol. So just an open circle. And we shade to represent the values of that variable. So x is greater than negative 200. We want to shade in the direction of numbers that are greater than 200, and greater is to the right. And then we just kind of highlight that to show that the numbers keep going more than what we can see here. Next, negative 3a minus 6 is less than or equal to negative 9. Still want to isolate that variable, going in the reverse order of operations. So we're going to start with our addition and subtraction. We have a negative 6. We will add 6 to both sides. That leaves us with negative 3a over here, less than or equal to negative 3. We do need to divide both sides by negative 3 to get that a alone. And one thing we must remember when we are working with inequalities is if we multiply or divide by a negative, we do need to change the direction of the inequality sign. So we will flip that around. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 will be positive 1. That's our solution. We do want to graph it. So 1, 2, 0. Circling our value, which is 1. This time we do want to shade that in, as it is including 1 because it says or equal to. Shading in the direction of A. A represents numbers that are greater. Greater is to the right, so I'm going to shade to the right. There we go. For our next example, we have 4 times 2 minus d greater than or equal to negative 12. Now there are multiple ways we could go about solving this and still get the same right answer. I am going to suggest that we divide by 4 first instead of being tempted to distribute it through. You can do that, but I think it's a little bit quicker and more efficient if we divide both sides by 4 first. So the 4's will cancel. We're left with 2 minus d greater than or equal to negative 3. From here, we want to subtract the 2 on both sides. We end up with negative d greater than or equal to negative 5. Now, at this point, we are not finished. We're close. We don't want negative d. We need to divide both sides by negative 1. We don't see it there because we're highly skilled. We did not write that 1, but we want to go ahead and divide both sides by negative 1 so that we end up with a positive d. Now, I just saw something. When we divide by negative, we would not get the symbol the same way. Of course, when we divide by negative, we need to change the direction of the sign. -5 divided by -1 would be 5. Graphing 5, 10, 0. We want to circle and close in the 5, and we are shading in the direction of numbers that are less than, right? I know it's less than because the sign is open to the 5, it has its back to the D, so that means we want to shade to the left. Next example, 2c minus 5 is less than 21 minus 2c. We have variables on both sides. We want them to be together. You can move whichever one you like. I would like to add positive 2c to both sides. We will end up with 4c minus 5 is less than 21. Adding 5 to both sides. 4c less than 26. Dividing both sides by 4. We don't get an integer this time, and that's okay. We have c is less than either 26 over 4, or we can reduce that down, dividing both the top and the bottom by 2. That would also equal 13 over 2. You can change that to a mixed number, 6 1/2. It's a little bit easier to graph when we change it to a mixed number, or also to a decimal. When we graph here, we'll have 6.5. Let's go 7 and 6. So open circle 6.5, and we're shading to the left. Notice in this problem how we have more than one variable. We have variables on both sides of the inequality, and that's okay. We will simply make sure that each side is simplified totally before we start moving things from one side to the other. So here we can use the same trick we saw before. We can go ahead and divide both sides by 4. That means I will divide everything over here by 4. So the 4's cancel. 5 minus 3b is greater than, these 4's will cancel, that's a b. And then these 4's will simplify to a 1. 4 over 4 is just 1, okay? All right, now it looks like both sides are completely simplified. We can't combine any like terms anymore. So we want the b's to be together. You can decide whichever one you want to move. I like to move the -3b, so I'll add 3b to both sides. We'll cancel, it gives me 5 greater than, invisible 1 here, we're highly skilled. 1 plus 3 is 4b plus 1. Subtracting 1 on both sides will give us 4 is greater than 4b. Now dividing both sides by 4. Cancel, coming over here, b less than 4 divided by 4 is 1. Okay, there's our answer. Time to graph. So I need an open circle on 1, and this time b is less than. I can see that because the mouth of the inequality is open to the 1. It has turned its back to the b. That means b is less than. So we want to shade numbers less than 1. Of course, if you don't like the way that's written, you can always rewrite it that way, okay? Next, -5s minus 8 all over 4 is greater than or equal to -22. So let's try to get this as simplified as possible. Isolating the s, we want to multiply both sides by 4. This is a positive 4, so it will not require us to change the direction of our inequality sign. Negative 22 times 4 is negative 88. We'll add 8 to both sides next. That will give us negative 80 over here. And on this side, we'll be left with negative 5s. Just one more step. Divide both sides by negative 5. The 5's cancel, we're left with s, but since we multiplied by a negative, we do need to change the direction of the inequality sign. And negative 80 divided by negative 5 is positive 16. So we're ready to graph on our number line. Let's do 16, 20, and 12. So now we would need a closed circle here. And we are shading for the numbers that are less than 16, so we'll shade to the left. Our next example is negative 3y minus 5 is less than 2 times 17 minus 5y. And once again, I see a set of parentheses here on one side, and I do see variables on both sides of the inequality. You might be tempted to divide both sides by 2, like what we saw in the previous example. However, just look ahead and see that 2 will not go evenly into our 3 and our 5 on the other side. So might not be the smartest move to make. So we're going to go ahead and distribute this time. 2 times 17 will give us 34, and then 2 times negative 5 is negative 10y. Negative 3y minus 5 over here. And so now both sides are simplified. We want to combine the y's. So I'm going to go ahead and move this negative 10 over by adding 10y to both sides. So those will cancel. A negative 3 plus positive 10 would be 7y. Minus 5 is less than 34. Next, just add that 5 over to the other side. So we end up with 7y is less than 39. And so from here, we want to divide both sides by 7. And y is 39 over 7. If we leave it as an improper fraction, you can change it to a mixed number, or you can change it to a decimal. This is approximately, if we divide 7 into 39, we get 5 4/7. So that does help us when it comes to the graph in terms of placement. So it is almost halfway. We want an open circle, and the y values are less than this number. So we're going to shade to the left for less. And there we go.